The news broke just a few hours ago of the death of Glen Hansard in a motorbike accident. Senior features writer with The Independent, John Meagher, interviewed him many times and is here to talk about him. Good afternoon, John.
Afternoon, Sean.
What was he like?
He was a very honest, upfront interviewee and somebody who was very approachable. Even after the success with Once, you could call him and he'd return the call, crucially, and remained very grounded despite that success, despite having the Oscar statuette in his kitchen, wherever it was. He retained that sense of just a guy from Ballymun who had wanted to become a professional musician and had made a really good career from it. And I guess over the last 20 years, being able to do whatever he wanted musically because he was financially secure, which was not the case in the early years of the Frames.
I suppose you could divide his career into pre-Oscar and post-Oscar, and pre-Oscar was like his mother had said, I think, took out a bank loan claiming she had to do something to the house so he can make his first demo.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the times that I spoke to him, he would phone later to say that he wanted to clarify something we talked about, and he'd say, "I'm in my ma's house at the moment." And there was this sense of he was very connected to his family and remained so. But such a difference between sort of Hollywood coming calling with a no budget film made by his friend John Carney. The before and after is quite stark, but I suppose my happiest memories of him are rooted in the 1990s when the Frames were so emblematic of the Dublin scene in that decade, and I saw them countless times. My girlfriend at the time, my first serious girlfriend, was a huge Frames fan and would frequently drag me along, but I didn't mind being dragged because he was a consummate frontman. There's some great memories of him kind of going quite wild on stage.
Yeah, and the Frames never quite broke internationally, or did they a bit?
To a small degree, I think they did, but not nearly as much as he would have liked. And one of the things that frustrated him was the fact that inferior bands, as he saw it, were doing very well. They had written a hit, for instance. I mean, if you look at something like Revelate, which is the opening song on the 1995 album Fitzcarraldo, that's a kind of an alternative Irish rock anthem from the 1990s. And at the time, I remember thinking, how is this not a huge global smash? Like, the guitar line is absolutely fantastic. And, when during those 90s gigs, places like Whelan's, the Olympia, the place would just, be hopping whenever they played that. But so many other good tunes as well. I think it was just a sense that maybe they didn't necessarily play the industry game the way some bands do. They were very much about, I guess, authenticity, which is sometimes a word that's bandied about the trade and nobody seems to know what it really means. But I think there was a sense of authenticity with Glen Hansard and with the Frames.
Yeah, no, but at the same time, he was ambitious and in the way, and he would admit to being ambitious in a way a lot of musicians wouldn't admit to being ambitious.
Oh, very, very much so. Like, when I first interviewed them, it was the end of the 90s, beginning of this millennium, and he made no bones about the fact that he wanted the band to be really successful. And I was intrigued when I first started writing about music that some of the elder statesmen of the critical game in this city were very snipey about the Frames. And one of the things they disliked was how open he was about wanting success, just the way Bono had been a decade before. Yeah. And I guess there's this kind of thing where we kind of, us critics, like bands who don't talk about this kind of stuff, that if success happens, it just happens by osmosis. But he really wanted it, and he felt that, why make music if you can't reach a large audience? And I suppose there was that happy outcome for him that he did eventually reach a large audience, mainly through his own solo work and his work as Swell Season with Marketa Irglova, of which Falling Slowly, of course, the Oscar-winning song, was the big smash. He recorded two versions of that song in 2006, by the way, one with the Frames on the Cost album, which was the last Frames album, and one with her. And I think now, though, that people, as is often the case, after somebody has died far too young, they will discover the old work and they will go back to the very early songs and an album like For the Birds from 2001, which is his favorite album that he ever made, and find that there's some very fine music there.
Yeah, and I suppose after Falling Slowly, as you say, he had more room to do different sorts of work. No, it's unfair to say get rid of the shackles of the frames, but kind of spread his wings about a bit beyond the frame.
Very, very much so. Although the frames remained a going concern, and when I last interviewed him, he said that he was keen to make another album with them, and a lot of it would hinge on the availability of the other members. But he was always somebody who enjoyed collaboration and just trying new things. And I suppose ultimately he was a singer-songwriter, somebody who toiled in the art of song, and I guess with the frames, the critics at the time would have said that this is kind of sub-Pixies stuff in terms of quiet, loud dynamics and all the rest of it. I wouldn't necessarily say that, but there was a sense that when he went solo that he could do whatever he wanted and not have to delegate to other band members, even though, as I say, the frames always remained part and parcel of who he was.
Yeah. And he always lived in Dublin. He never...
Yeah. Well, his wife is from Helsinki. So he has been over and back to Finland a lot. And of course, the horrendous tragedy of all of this is they have a son, Christy, who turns 4 in the autumn. And again, when I interviewed him last, a few years ago, he talked about the joy he felt about becoming a dad at 52. He said it was something that he'd always wanted to be, and that it had come a bit later than he'd expected, but he said it's just such a joy.
Yeah.
And that he was trying to, family life was ever present, but I said, how do you combine creativity with a young family? And he said, you just try to carve out the time. But he seemed like somebody who was just newly married and a dad and really excited for the next chapter in his life, which is another thing that makes all of this so unspeakably awful.
Yeah, that makes it cruel as what his life. Sometimes with musicians, they peak after the first album, whereas he was in his 40s by the time Falling Slowly came along. It's actually, and then his personal life, he got married, had a child. Things were getting better as he was going.
Things really were getting better, and there was a sense like at 56 there was at least another couple of decades of music to come. I went to see Paul Simon at 84 in the 3 Arena a few months back, and he was fantastic. The idea of musicians retiring is old hat at this stage. They keep going. And there really was a sense that he had found the kind of music he wanted to make with the kind of people that he wanted to make it with, one of whom was Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam. It's remarkable, their connection, because it's a very strange and grim story in that both him and Eddie Vedder are musicians who played concerts that fans died at. And Pearl Jam played Roskilde in Denmark, and 9 people were crushed to death there. And Glen Hansard also played a show where somebody passed away. And that's something that nobody expects to have to experience or to cope with. And Eddie Vedder reached out to him and said, look, I understand what you're going through more than pretty much anybody. And a solid friendship formed from that, and they have collaborated since. But one thing that always struck me about Glen Hansard was his interest in working with other musicians, and particularly around good causes, of which there were a number of things close to his heart in this country.
Sure, yeah. Actually, somebody's texted in to say, I have a memory of him singing up to a patient in Blanchardstown during the COVID lockdown when I was visiting my late brother, who was a patient at the time. Such sad news. He was a brilliant artist. That's even kind of small things like that. And certainly since that news broke and during Andrea's program, there was lots of those small little kindnesses he performed.
Very much so. And I think anybody who bumped into him in the street, and he really was one of those musicians you would bump into in the street, he had time for people. And, there really were no airs and graces about him. And part of him, I think, was even slightly embarrassed to have won the Oscar. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he kind of embraced it as the way other people might necessarily. And one of the great memories for me about that night is that he's playing the song with Marquetta, and he's got that old battered guitar that he adored, because musicians, of course, are so attached to certain instruments. And it was kind of falling apart. And I asked him about that later, and he said, look, I wrote pretty much every song that matters in my career on that guitar. So I will not be parted with it. You've got to prize it from my fingers if you want it.